everyone, and welcome to Thorough Newspaper Analysis, which is brought to you by LawSeco. So, today we'll be discussing three articles. All the three articles are from the Indian Express. The first article is Basic Income and Patriarchy. So, this is a very good concept, though it is not something very novel or new in the world, but still it has never been formalized. So, the concept is of paying the housewives for their domestic labor or whatever work they do in the homes. But what is the impact of patriarchy on it? And even if this is a feasible idea in the long run or not, has been discussed in this article. The second one is miscarriage of a reform, which talks about the various provisions that were there in the anti-triple talaq law, which was brought in 2019. But how and what way has it been misconstrued by the people and misunderstood by them has been discussed in this article. And in the third one, the return of bird flu. Now, as we know that 6 states approximately have notified, have actually confirmed that they are facing the problem of bird flu. So what actually is this bird flu, this form or this subtype of the bird flu, and what are the implications of this one has been discussed in this article. So if you're also preparing for judicial services examination, you can have a look at the Lord of the Courses, which is the judiciary test prep course all the way coming from LawSeco. The link to this course is there in the description box below, and you can get free study material as well for your own preparation. Also, we're excelling into courses like CLAT, All India Bar Exam, SEBI, etc. You can have a look at them too. With this, let's see that what is the multiple choice question from yesterday's discussion. Who amongst the following has been named as the first Indian American Chief Information Officer of the US Army? Your options are Raj Iyer, Kamala Harris, Roman Subramanian, or none of the above. You can write down your answer in the comment section below. So this is the descriptive question for the day. Discuss the pros and cons of anti-triple talaq law in India. Discuss its role in uplifting the status of Muslim women in the Indian society. So with this, let's start with the first article for the day, which talks about the wages for housework. So recently, there is a political party in the southern India called as Makkal Nidhi Mayam, which has promised the salaries to housewives as a part of its election campaign in Tamil Nadu. So in its election agenda, it has promised that it will be paying the housewives as well the salaries for their housework that they are doing. And then this idea was also welcomed by Shashi Tharoor. So the idea, wages against homework. So they say the idea is basically that these housewives who actually, and as we know that we maybe have upgraded the status of housewives by just calling them homemakers or something. Yeah, maybe it is a better and more decent way of calling them such, but still we need to realize the fact that we as a society as well and as the government as well, and we even the members of the our own family, we do not really realize the work that our mothers have been doing, or if we talk about the sisters who are housewives, the wives themselves, and the labor and the the input that they put in the household, it is rarely it is given any kind of recognition in the first place, and it is given any kind of remuneration in the second place. So maybe yes, what all we do is that on the Mother's Day or Women's Day we tend to do something on just for one day of the year, but definitely that is not sufficient. And that is why this idea of paying the wages against their homework has been housework or the homework has been raised by this political party. So basically it was first raised at the third National Women's Liberation Conference in Manchester, England. So as I said, that it is not for the first time that in the entire world this idea of paying the housework has been brought up. Rather, it was already done by this time. And then the International Wages for Housework campaign was formed by Selma James in 1972. Several organizations in UK, US, Canada, and Italy have raised similar requests. And if we talk particularly about India, so in 2010, an application by the National Housewives Association was brought in seeking recognition as trade union, but it was rejected because it was said that being working for the house or doing any kind of house chores is not a trade. So definitely the union cannot be given given recognition in the name of trade union. So the entire idea was rejected back then. And then in 2012, the then Minister of Women and Child Development announced that government was considering just give me a second. Yeah, so government was considering mandating a complete law for this, but it has not been brought till now. So the need for the hour is that a large number of women live with domestic violence and cruelty as they are economically dependent on others. Now, as we know that most of the times, at least in the context of India, when we ask a woman to just leave or desert her husband because he is violent on her, he beats her up, or he does any kind of torture to her, the first and foremost, the biggest reason that springs up is that where will I go? Because obviously the parents, the maternal house in India, either the parents are not supportive of the fact, or they do not want their daughters back in their home, with several reasons. They are not financially independent, which actually stops them from raising any voice against the domestic violence that they are facing. So if at all they will be paid for their housework, at least they will have some financial stability to look after themselves. Then it is important to recognize the value of unpaid domestic work, as I already had mentioned that, as we know, like you can just see over here also. So if according to the time use data for 2019, only 1/4 of the men and boys above 6 years are engaged in the unpaid household work, as compared to 4/5 of the women. So you can consider, you can understand that a lot of a huge number of women are engaged into household work, which is neither remunerated, and nor it is recognized by us as a society, due to which the women, many a times, they face the barriers in moving towards education system as well, and they are treated very badly as well. And then an average Indian male spends only 1.5 hours a day in unpaid domestic work. And on the contrary, a woman spends approximately 5 hours per day in domestic work. So you can understand it is times more than what the men are spending in the household work. So definitely it deserves to be remunerated. Now, another question that was raised in this article was that who will actually be paying the remuneration? Now, definitely we need to have a model act for that completely, because we need to have a complete model of its functionality. Because if in case the government mandates that the husband out of his salary would be paying a part as household remuneration to his wife, then again the idea of patriarchy. Now, why this article has this very word, the use of patriarchy, that again it will give a sense of patriarchy and male supremacy in the mind of that husband, that he is the one who is paying the wife. So this definitely, instead of giving any kind of relief to the women, will on the contrary increase the level or increase the sense of patriarchy in that household. So that definitely should not be option to be considered, and some other means, maybe government through account transfers or different schemes, should be doing this, or bringing about this idea. With this, let's discuss the second article for the day, which talks about the triple talaq law. So the Supreme Court bench led by Justice D.Y. Chandrachud in Rehna Jalal versus State of Kerala and another, observed in a recently decided case under the Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Marriage Act 2019, held that only the husband can be an accused under the law. So basically, the plaintiff here had brought in or had sued her mother-in-law in under the triple talaq law, but it is clarified again by the Supreme Court that the provisions of the anti-triple talaq law, which is the Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Marriage Act 2019, these provisions are still not clear to the people. And we can imagine that if the targeted beneficiaries of a particular legislation don't really even understand the legislation, how can we really expect that they will be benefited out of it? So actually, because as we know that the plaintiff in here had sued her mother-in-law again in the triple talaq, under the anti-triple talaq law, and thus the Supreme Court has made it clear again and again that this law is only and only against the Muslim husband and none other relatives, unlike the IPC section 498A for the domestic violence or the cruelty against married women, wherein even the family members of the husband can be sued, but it is not the case with the anti-triple talaq law. Now, this is the very thing that has been said here, that Section 498A of the IPC, that is cruelty to a woman by her husband or his relatives, is often misused. So similarly, even the anti-triple talaq law in 2019 is also prone to misuse. So the provision for bail under Section 7, it is wrongly believed to override the general provisions for anticipatory bail under Section 438 of CRPC. So it is not a complete substitution to any other general law which is available. Rather, it is an addition to them. So if there is the provision for Section 7, the provision for bail, it cannot really override the provision for anticipatory bail, which is already available to that person under the CRPC provisions. So the Kerala High Court in the given case wrongly refused to grant the bail to the accused husband's mother, but that should not have been the case because she had the right to be granted the bail under Section 438 of CRPC as well. So even the courts of law have to, understand and interpret the law in a very clear and lucid manner. So this is the entire verdict which was given by the Supreme Court. The appellant, as the mother-in-law of the second respondent, who was wife, cannot be accused of the offence of pronouncement of triple talaq under this act, as the offence can only be committed by a Muslim man who is the husband in this case. And the Parliament has not overridden the provisions of Section 438 CRPC, and there is not a specific provision in Section 7C or anywhere in the Act making 438 inapplicable to an offence punishable under the Act. So the other already existing provisions are very much applicable even in the context of this Act. With this, let's discuss the final article for the day, which talks about bird flu. So recently, bird flu or the avian influenza. Now, why are we calling it as the avian influenza? Because avian are these species that can actually fly, or the bird species. Now, as we know, this flu is affecting the bird species in the in totality. So it is called as the avian influenza. Was confirmed in Kerala, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Haryana, and Himachal Pradesh, whereas Maharashtra is on high alert already. So if we learn about the infection, it is a viral infection. Now here again a prelims question can form that whether bird flu is a bacterial disease, it is a viral disease, it is related to the protozoans or what. So we should know that bird flu is a viral infection mostly reported in birds with potential to affect humans and other animals. So the most common strain is H5N1, and there are other strains as well which are H7 and H8, but this one is also the H5N1 strain. And fortunately, till now, this strain is not very strong. And also, reports have shown that this strain is, this virus is actually very much sensitive to heat. And if the food is cooked properly or the eggs are boiled properly, then this virus shall die. And this also is not currently not very fatal on the humans, and it is not really does not have much potential of spreading from human to human, but in the coming future there might be some changes that could come. So this was first reported in geese, as we know that it is also a species of the avian, the species, in China in 1995. So Maharashtra reported first case in India in 2006. So if we talk about the human transmission, H5N1 can jump species and can infect humans, but it is not that rapid, So it is not like that it can at all not do this, but currently, fortunately, it is not that rapid spread. So then the first case in human was reported in Hong Kong in 1997, and the mortality rate of this virus in humans is 60%. Then, according to Dr. Ranade, who has been working in this research, the transmission to humans in India is comparatively low due to different eating habits. And also, if we talk about the eating habits and the cuisine that we have in India, the food is cooked a lot on the fire. So unlike Western countries where they prefer a lot of uncooked and raw food as well, and even the meat, is many times half cooked and not cooked to that much of heat. But unlike that in India, we have a habit of cooking the food to so much of for such a long time that it is a good thing, at least for now, that the virus gets killed. And then if we talk about the relevant data, so from 2006 to 2018, India reported 225 epicenters of bird flu infection. So epicenters means the areas where it actually sprung the most, or the areas which reported the highest number of cases. 83.49 lakh birder were culled, with farmers being paid rupees 26.37 crore in compensation. So a lot of birds were killed. They were on purpose. They were killed, and the compensation was paid to the farmers who are into livestock rearing. Then for Maharashtra, it was the first state to report the bird flu and has not seen an outbreak since 2006. And in April-June 2020, poultry industry suffered loss of around $1 billion due to the reports of COVID-19 spreading from chicken and eggs. And as we know, that thanks to the fake news that every time comes with any other kind of, a new thing happening in the society, we just discussed recently also, that even in the times of COVID-19, a lot of fake news was spreading or floating even on the social media. And in the initial days of COVID-19, in India, there were spreads of this particular news or fact, the wrong fact, I must say, that the chicken and eggs are also responsible for spreading COVID-19, which definitely had nothing to do with COVID-19. But still, even at that time, because just of this fake news, the poultry industry suffered a loss of $1 billion. And if you talk about the consumption of poultry in India, so 30 crore poultry birds are consumed every month, and 90 crore eggs are consumed every month. So this is really huge. So we're done for the day. We hope it was a good and informative session for you all. If you wish to download the PDF for today's slides, you can join our Telegram group, which is there. The link to which is there in the description box below. You can also visit our official website for any other information. Thank you so much.